What's happening, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. It is Friday, March 28th, and we have the final 4 games of the Sweet 16 to dive into here in this video. We're going to break them down and analyze them, and then I'll talk about which way that I'm leaning for each of those contests as well. And then any plays that I put in officially myself, I'll put a link down in that pinned comment later on. It's going to direct you right over to the Guy Boston Sports website, and that's where those final plays will live. So let's not waste any time. Let's dive right into the action. Hit that like button down there. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, guys. Let's get on into it, man. We got Ole Miss taking on Michigan State in our first game of the night. Michigan State coming into this one as 3.5-point favorites. We have a total sitting at 143.5. Now, of the 8 Sweet 16 games, this one does have the shortest line, that 3.5, and I do get it to an extent. Ole Miss did dominate UNC for much of that first round contest, right? They did allow the Tar Heels to kind of crawl their way back into it in the second half and make things interesting, but ultimately, Ole Miss did pull out the victory. Then they turned around and they ran Iowa State straight off the court, right? They took the lead in that one with a little over 13 minutes to play in the first half, and then they never looked back. They didn't trail again after that. Rebels played about as close to perfect as you can against those Cyclones, man. They shot the ball 58%, not only from deep, but from the field overall as well. Just a great shooting game from them, a great shooting display that I definitely would expect to see some regression from, coming into this next game. Not only just naturally because who the hell can shoot the ball that well every single game, right? But also because they are facing a Spartan defense that sits third in the nation for opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Michigan State is also sitting at 6th for adjusted defensive efficiency as well. And we see the Spartans sitting at 7th overall in the Ken Palms, Ole Miss sitting at 21st. These teams are 25th and 24th, respectively, offensively. And then Ole Miss sits at 29th in terms of adjusted defensive efficiency. Michigan State has struggled, through these first 2 rounds with their opponents early on in the game. So, we got to make note of that. I think that combined with this near perfect performance from Ole Miss is the beginning factors to why this line is shorter like it is at that 3.5. But Michigan State was able to pull away in both games. They did beat the Lobos by 8 in the round of 32. But look, man, New Mexico definitely gave them a scare. You gotta make note of that. New Mexico gave them a scare for sure, right? Gave them a run for their money. They kept things close and they held the lead for much of the first half in that one as well. Michigan State was able to pull away in that one later on in the game. Midway through that second half, they were starting to get some energy going, and they went on some runs and really started locking down defensively as well. And that was the key. Their defense was creating opportunities on the offensive end. It was much of the same in that Bryant game. It seemed to happen quicker, right? For the first half of that first half, I'd say Bryant was kind of hanging tough with them, and then Michigan State started going on those runs and kind of pulled away. The thing is, Michigan State has lacked a 3-ball all season long. This is why these games have remained close, through these first 2 rounds. This is where their struggles have come in, and it was a big factor in their struggles against New Mexico for sure. But they do continue to be elite from inside the arc. They shot just under 54% against New Mexico, and they have averaged 54% shooting on the year from 2-point range. The Rebels themselves, they rely heavily on outside shooting, and they aren't the best rebounding team. And these are 2 factors that should spell trouble for them when facing Sparty, right? Look, Ole Miss struggles on the offensive glass, man. They're sitting at 325th overall in the nation for offensive rebound percentage, while Michigan State is sitting at 31st. And then if we look at these 2 teams to the number, Michigan State 24-10 with 1 push in there. Ole Miss just 18-16, also with 1 push. But if we look at them to the number, coming into a game with equal rest, we can see that Ole Miss has covered in 10 of their last 20. Michigan State has covered in 9 of their last 13. Pop over here to Outlier real quick. Let's take a look at the stats real quick, looking at Ole Miss's offense against their defense. I want to focus down here on the shooting like we had talked about. 205 in terms of field goal percentage for Ole Miss, 220th for 2-point percentage, and 134th in terms of 3-point shooting percentage. Then we look at Michigan State's defense, 17th overall, 97th for 2-pointers, and 3rd overall for 3-point shooting percentage. So then just looking at them in their last 10 games, we can see as well, Michigan State has covered this 3.5-point line at an 80% rate. Ole Miss only covering that 3.5 plus 3.5 at a 50% rate. And then we look at this insight from Outlier as well. More good news on Sparty's side, right? Michigan State 7-1 against the spread in their last 8 games as a favorite, an 88% hit rate. So all in all, I like Michigan State in this one. I'm leaning them, laying the 3.5 points for sure. We can get that at BetMGM right now and Bet365 for -110. Next up, we have Kentucky taking on Tennessee. Volunteers are 4.5-point favorites in this one. Total sitting at 144.5. That's the battle of the SEC. It's the first such here in this tournament. Tennessee, they come in with the better record overall, right? They're sitting at 29-7 as compared to Kentucky's 24-11. The Wildcats did win both the meetings head-to-head with the Volunteers this season, and Kentucky won each of those games with strong shooting performances. They shot exactly 50% from deep and the field in both games. What kind of crazy coincidence is that? But they also won those games on the hands of very strong perimeter defense as well. Now, the Wildcats do come into this one ranked 301st in terms of 2-point shooting percentage allowed, but they are 20th in terms of 3-point shooting allowed. So we see where we can exploit them, right? Where the weakness lies on the defense. Tennessee did not do such in the 2 prior meetings head-to-head. They held Tennessee to under 25% shooting from deep in both of the games, including a dreadful 11 of 45 in the first game. They jacked up 45 threes, making just 11 of them. Like I said, exploit that Kentucky defense, right? Their 2-point shooting percentage is drastically low or drastically high. They sit drastically low in the rankings. And we're jacking up 45 threes. And then they followed that up with a 17% shooting performance, 3 of 18 shooting in the second game from deep. That's just 14 of 63 from 3 through 2 games against Kentucky this season. And man, that's honestly it. That's what did them in. Despite limiting turnovers and winning the battle on the glass, despite slowing the game down to a pace that they prefer to play at, Tennessee was just simply outshot on one end, and then they were outperformed defensively on the other end. Tennessee on the year has been the better defense. On that end, they are first in effective field goal percentage allowed. They are first in shooting percentage allowed. They are first in 3-point shooting percentage allowed. But Kentucky doesn't care one bit. Man, numbers be damned. They have had Tennessee's number all year long, and really as of late as well. We look at these guys head-to-head. Kentucky has not only won, but they have covered as dogs in 5 of the last 6 head-to-head between these two. They were double-digit dogs in 2 of those. So do the books have it wrong here yet again? Look, I think it's fair to worry, right, about Kentucky knocking off Tennessee 3 times in one season. I think it's fair to worry that they're going to have another hot shooting night like they've had in the previous 2 matches against Tennessee this year. But if we look at them through their first 2 rounds and the performance that they've given us, they have shot the ball well. 38% from 3 in each of those games so far. And they've also locked up on the perimeter. They've held each opponent to under 40% shooting. And then if we look at them against the spread on the year, we can see Tennessee 15-15 as a favorite. Kentucky 8-4 to the number as a dog. If we jump over here to Outlier, guys, you can see, like we said, head-to-head, Kentucky has had their number in these previous matchups. The last 3 in a row, we've seen them not only cover the spread, but cover this 4.5-point spread that they're being given in this game as well. We can check out this insight from Outlier. It's more good news if you're on the Kentucky side. They're 11-4 against the spread in their last 15 games as a dog, which they are in this one as well. So, Kentucky plus 4.5 right now, best price. Well, you can get it anywhere, -110 on all the books. Kentucky plus 4.5. That's definitely the way that I'm leaning in this one. And next up, I'm looking at that Michigan and Auburn game. We have the Tigers sitting at 8.5-point favorites over the Wolverines in this one. The total sitting at 153.5. Now, the Michigan Wolverines do come into this one winners of 5 straight. There was 3 straight to win the Big Ten Conference Tournament, and now 2 in a row to reach the Sweet 16. But if we dissect those wins just a little bit, it brings a little bit of cause for concern, right, when facing these Auburn Tigers that they're coming into this game against. The Tigers have won 3 of their last 4, and that lone loss was a 5-point defeat to Tennessee. Very good team, right? And, it was in a conference tournament game that just really didn't matter for them. Their seeding, their position was locked up. So, Yeah, I'm not putting too much weight into that one loss here recently. Auburn has looked pretty damn good. They beat a good Ole Miss team before that loss to Tennessee, and then they're coming off in a pretty impressive 12-point victory over a tough Creighton squad as well. So Michigan has close wins over good Maryland and Wisconsin teams in that 5-game winning streak, but they have also struggled, through a close game in round one to UC San Diego, and then they had to erase a 10-point deficit against Texas A&M to close out that victory there. Now, while we can say that means Auburn has looked more convincing coming into this one so far in this tournament, we could also say that means Michigan knows how to get it done in crunch time, right? They know how to overcome some adversity and close out some games. Now, looking at things head to head here, this is where I start having a lot of cause for concern. Is Auburn has a monster down below, right? In the paint, he averages a double-double at 18 and 10, talking about Janai Broome. And then they have a host of guards that can deliver from the perimeter as well. They're shooting just over 37% from deep on the year. That's good for 35th in the nation. The Wolverines are only allowing 30% shooting from deep, though, and they do have two giants in the paint themselves in Golden and Wolf that could contend with Broome and protect the rim. And these are areas that Michigan has been good all year, right? Along with defending the mid-range as well. Like they sit 36 overall in opponents' two-point shooting percentage, and they're only allowing a 46% conversion rate. The problem for Michigan isn't going to be on the defensive end, though. It's a lack of efficiency on the offensive end. They sit at just 44th overall for adjusted offensive efficiency. They are 11th for two-point shooting percentage, and that makes a ton of sense, right? Their offense is so centered around Wolf. And honestly, him carrying the team, that's, what the offense really has become. But unless someone else can step up, man, and knock some shots down for this Wolverine team that ranks just 207th in terms of three-point shooting percentage, they're going to struggle against this Tiger team. Auburn sits inside the top 50 for two-point and overall field goal shooting percentage allowed, and they are 11th in three-point shooting percentage allowed. So, a lack of offense is not what you want coming into a game against this Auburn defense. And, Auburn can get it done on the other end themselves offensively, like we already said. So, I think that's where we find some troubles for Michigan in this one. Michigan also gives the ball up a ton, and Auburn stays efficient on the offensive end, sitting at second for assist-to-turnover ratio. Michigan has a turnover percentage sitting at just under 20th, and that puts them at 338th in the nation. So I think all in all, I'm leaning Auburn in this one, laying the points. I'm not 100% on this one. This is definitely one to check the pinned comment later on for that link that's going to send you over to the Guy Boston website. That way you can see the final plays and what we are rolling with officially. I'm not 100% on this one, but like I said, definitely leaning Auburn right now on the spread. Then last up, we're going to be looking at Purdue taking on Houston. Houston is 8.5-point favorites. The total sitting at 131.5. Now, this one is being played at Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis, which could hold some weight here. That's only an hour drive from West Lafayette. That's where Purdue plays their home games at. So we could see a pretty Purdue-heavy crowd coming into this one for the Sweet 16 matchup. But I'm not too sold on the Boilermakers coming into this one despite that potential advantage. That might be the only advantage. Now, we did see Purdue handle each of their two opponents with relative ease, right? They beat High Point by 12, and they beat McNeese State by 16. Houston, on the other hand, demolished Southern Illinois Edwardsville in the opener. Then they did struggle with Gonzaga before pulling away late for that 5-point dub. But much has to be said about the difference in competition, right? At least in this last round. We can see McNeese State sitting at 58th overall in the KenPoms, Gonzaga 9th. You know what I mean? So definitely the harder path here lies with Houston. And I think we can cut them a little bit of slack for the, for having a battle to a victory with a good Gonzaga team. You know what I mean? I'm not sold on McNeese State. They were like kind of everybody's favorite pick, right? And I think a lot of stock has been put into Purdue after that win over McNeese State. But I just don't find it that impressive personally, man. And if you look into it for what it is, McNeese became a popular pick after upsetting Clemson, but they really got lucky in that win over Clemson. Clemson couldn't hit anything in the first half at all. And they still damn near came all the way back in the second half. So, like I said, man, I just don't put a lot of stock in Purdue's win so far. First one's High Point, enough said. So, besides all this, when looking at each team, it's clear who the better team is in all aspects of the game. Everything Purdue does good, Houston does great. But the biggest difference between these two lies on the defensive end, as Purdue is just 57th for adjusted defensive efficiency on the year, we have Houston coming in at first in the nation in that regard. Purdue also, we got to give them some credit here. They are going to have the best guard out of these backcourts, right? But Houston's going to bring in the best backcourt as a whole. And it's one of the best defensive backcourts in the nation as well. Purdue is one of the best three-point shooting teams in the nation. They sit at 13th overall. They're shooting over 38% from deep, but Houston only allows 31% shooting from beyond the arc. And with no big man to go to down low, Purdue is going to be forced to settle for a lot of jumpers, right? And that's something I don't like for them at all going up against this Cougar defense. There's always a potential. We have to keep an eye on this. We have to keep this in consideration that Purdue could feed off of that potential home crowd energy. They could keep this one closer early on, but I like Houston to begin to pull away by halftime, right, and put these guys away early in the second half. After a lackluster second half showing against Gonzaga, and like I said, that's nothing to discredit Gonzaga by any means. That's a good team, and that's the reason why they were able to frustrate Houston and tighten that game up. But there was definitely, it was a lackluster showing. There's no other way to put it. Houston can play better. They know they can play better. Coach Sampson knows that they can play better. He's going to be all over these guys, and I think we see a much improved effort on both ends of the court for a full 40 minutes. And I think that we see them, like I said, I could see Houston start to pull away by halftime. And then we come out the second half, man, this one's just not even a game anymore. They are loaded with guards, guys, like in the starting lineup, coming off the bench, and they can just put so much pressure on Purdue and that weak interior defense, if anything. Like I said, they don't really have a big guy down there. There's no size to contend and protect the rim. They sit all the way down at 352nd in terms of two-point shooting percentage allowed. This should open up things on the perimeter as well for the Cougars. And while Purdue is a solid 32nd, in terms of three-point shooting percentage allowed, Houston sits at 4th in the nation, hitting just under 40% from deep. So if Houston plays to their strengths, they could really roll in this one, man. Attack the rim, attack the rim, attack the rim with their litany of guards and exceptional ball handlers, man. And then utilize that to open up the perimeter and just start raining in threes on these guys. I like them to pull away early, like I said, man. But with that said, I like the under in this one as well, though. We have two teams that can shoot the ball really well from deep, like I just said. Two teams that sit inside the top 10 ratings offensively in the Ken Palms. But looking at those same Ken Palms, it shows that we have two teams that like to play at a slower pace, and that's why I like this under in this one. We have Purdue coming in at 299 for adjusted tempo. Houston is 360. So with that total sitting where it is at 131.5, it is lower. But even so, man, at that kind of a pace, like we need both these teams to be lights out, and I only think that one of these teams is going to be lights out. And we'll just pop over here to Outlier. Let's look at this insight real quick. The Purdue Boilermakers are 2-5 against the spread in their last 7 games as a dog, a 71% hit rate there. So we definitely like it, man. I'm leaning Houston on this one, -8.5, and you can get that for -104 over there at FanDuel right now. So that's going to do it. I hope you guys enjoyed the content. I hope you found it helpful and useful. And if you did, please do not forget to smash the like button down there and hit subscribe. Definitely helps us out a ton, and we all three appreciate it greatly over here at the channel. That's going to do it, man. I'll see you all tomorrow for the Elite 8. Best of luck.